My boyfriend's sister shared my confidential work files online. His response ended our 3-year relationship. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to end a 3-year relationship over family drama, but sometimes life has other plans. Looking back, I should have seen the signs earlier with Jake and his sister Laura. The red flags were there from the beginning, waving frantically in my face, but love has a way of tinting everything rose-colored. I met Jake at a mutual friend's housewarming party. He was charming, with an easy smile and a way of making everyone feel comfortable. We bonded over our shared love of true crime podcasts and our mutual hatred of cilantro. 3 weeks and 5 dates later, he introduced me to his family, including his notorious sister Laura. She's a free spirit, he'd warned me beforehand, a phrase I'd come to realize was code for perpetual chaos machine. Laura burst into the family dinner 20 minutes late, trailing the scent of cigarettes and wearing what looked like last night's club outfit. She hugged me so enthusiastically that she spilled her wine on my new blouse, laughing it off with a casual "Oh, honey, red's your color anyway." Jake's parents just exchanged knowing looks, while he quickly handed me a napkin, whispering, "She means well." That set the tone for our entire relationship. Laura was always there, hovering at the edges of our life together, ready to crash through whatever boundaries we tried to establish. At first, it was small things. She'd forget her wallet when we went out to eat, leading Jake to cover her portion. She'd call at 3 a.m. because she was in the neighborhood and wanted to crash on our couch, despite living on the other side of town. I tried to be understanding. Family is complicated, and Jake clearly adored his sister. But as time went on, Laura's impositions grew more frequent and more invasive. She started treating our apartment like an extension of her own space, showing up unannounced and rummaging through our fridge. Once, I came home to find her wearing my favorite sweater, which she'd borrowed while I was at work. "Come on, Amy," Jake would say when I expressed my frustration. "She doesn't have much stability in her life. We need to be there for her." The incident that should have been my wake-up call happened about a year into our relationship. Jake and I had planned a romantic weekend getaway to celebrate our anniversary. We'd booked a cute bed and breakfast in wine country, made dinner reservations at a Michelin-starred restaurant, the works. 2 days before we were set to leave, Laura showed up at our door in tears. She'd broken up with her boyfriend of 3 months, a record for her, and couldn't bear to be alone. Jake immediately offered to let her stay with us for a few days. When I reminded him about our trip, he looked at me with those pleading eyes. "We can always reschedule, right? Laura needs us right now." I agreed, reluctantly, and we spent our anniversary weekend watching Laura cycle through crying, angry rants about her ex, and marathon sessions of reality TV shows. She monopolized Jake's attention, and when I tried to suggest maybe she could stay with their parents instead, she burst into tears and accused me of not understanding family loyalty. Jake pulled me aside later that night. "I know this isn't ideal," he said, "but Laura's going through a rough time. She's family, and family comes first." The weekend turned into a week, then 2. Laura would make vague noises about apartment hunting but never actually looked at listings. She started rearranging our furniture, claiming she was helping by giving the place a more lived-in vibe. She used my expensive face creams and wore my clothes without asking. When I confronted her about it, she'd laugh it off. "What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine, right? We're practically sisters." Jake and I started fighting more. The strain of having a third person in our relationship was taking its toll. Our intimate moments were constantly interrupted by Laura knocking on our bedroom door, needing to talk about some crisis or another. Date nights were hijacked when she'd tag along, uninvited, claiming she was saving us from being boring. Things came to a head when Laura lost her job. She'd been working as a social media manager for a local boutique, but got fired for posting inappropriate content on the company's accounts while drunk. Instead of looking for new work, she decided to find herself and started a lifestyle blog. This mainly consisted of her taking selfies in our apartment and writing rambling posts about authentic living. Our apartment became her unofficial studio. She'd rearrange our living room for her photo shoots, leaving everything in disarray. She started borrowing my work laptop because hers was too slow for editing. I come home to find my browser history full of questionable websites and my hard drive space mysteriously depleted. I tried to set boundaries. I changed my laptop password and started keeping it in a locked drawer. I asked Jake to talk to her about respecting our space. He promised to do it, then backed down the moment Laura got teary-eyed or accused him of not supporting her dreams. The breaking point came during what was supposed to be a small dinner party. I'd invited a few colleagues over, including my boss, hoping to discuss a major project we were working on. Laura, who wasn't even supposed to be there, showed up halfway through dinner, already tipsy from pre-gaming at a friend's place. While I was in the kitchen plating dessert, Laura decided to entertain my colleagues. I returned to find her going through my laptop, which I'd foolishly left out on the coffee table. She was showing everyone the confidential documents I'd been working on, adding her own commentary. "Oh my God, you guys, listen to this corporate speak," she giggled, reading from a sensitive strategy document. "Amy's always so serious about her important work, but it's just a bunch of fancy words saying nothing." Before I could stop her, she'd taken screenshots and posted them to her blog and social media accounts, adding snarky comments about corporate culture and calling out specific details that were absolutely not meant for public consumption. My colleagues looked mortified, my boss was furious, and Jake was laughing along with his sister. I managed to salvage the evening somehow, but the damage was done. The next day at work, I was called into a meeting with HR. The leaked information had caused significant problems with a client, and there was talk of legal action. I managed to convince them it was an honest mistake, but my reputation took a serious hit. Projects I'd been leading were reassigned, and I could feel my career trajectory taking a nosedive. When I confronted Laura about it, her response was infuriating. "Oh, lighten up," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's not like it was state secrets or anything. Besides, you shouldn't leave things lying around if they're that important." I demanded she take down the posts immediately, but she refused, saying they were getting great engagement and she was finally finding her voice as a content creator. It wasn't until I threatened to report her posts as copyright infringement that she finally removed them, but the damage was already done. I expected Jake to be on my side this time. Surely, he could see how Laura had crossed a line? But when I tried to talk to him about it, he was dismissive. "Look, I know Laura can be a bit much sometimes," he said, "but she didn't mean any harm. She's just trying to build her brand, you know? Maybe this is a sign you need to loosen up a bit about work stuff." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Loosen up. Jake, she could have gotten me fired. This isn't about work stuff, it's about respect and boundaries. He sighed, giving me that patronizing look I'd grown to hate. "You're overreacting. Laura's going through a transitional phase right now. She needs support, not criticism. Family forgives, Amy. You need to let this go." That night, as I lay awake listening to Laura's loud phone conversation in our living room, apparently, midnight was the perfect time to catch up with her friends, I realized something had to change. The next morning, I tried one last time to talk to Jake. "I can't keep living like this," I told him. "Laura's behavior is affecting my life, my career, and our relationship. We need to set some firm boundaries." Jake's response was telling. "I can't choose between my girlfriend and my sister," he said. "Laura's family. She'll always be in my life. If you can't accept that, maybe you're not the right person for me." The thing is, I never asked him to choose. I just wanted him to stand up for me, to acknowledge that his sister's actions had real consequences. But in his mind, any criticism of Laura was an attack on family itself. The next few weeks were tense. Laura continued to treat our apartment as her personal space, and Jake continued to enable her. The final straw came when I overheard them laughing about the work incident. Laura was telling Jake how her follower count had increased after her corporate expose posts, and he was congratulating her on finding her audience. That evening, I started packing my things. When Jake asked what I was doing, I tried to explain one last time. "This isn't about choosing between your girlfriend and your sister," I said. "It's about respect, boundaries, and having a partner who stands up for you when someone wrongs you, even if that someone is family." He accused me of being cold-hearted, of putting my career over our relationship. "I can't believe you're throwing away 3 years over something that's not even that serious," he said. "Laura made a mistake. Why can't you just move past it?" The next day, I signed a lease on a new apartment. As I moved my things out, Laura had the audacity to ask if she could keep some of my clothes she'd borrowed. Jake stood by, saying nothing, as his sister rifled through my boxes, picking out items she liked. In the weeks that followed, Jake's family launched a campaign to paint me as the villain. His mother called, telling me I was being selfish for not giving Laura room to grow. His father sent a lengthy email about the importance of family and forgiveness. Even their cousins, whom I'd only met a handful of times, reached out on social media to express their disappointment in my lack of understanding. Laura, for her part, wrote a blog post about toxic people who prioritize work over relationships and how sometimes losing someone shows you who they really were. She didn't name me directly, but her followers quickly figured it out and filled the comments with supportive messages about how she was better off without negative influences in her life. Jake told anyone who would listen that I'd chosen my career over love, that I was abandoning him over a silly mistake. He conveniently left out the part about how that silly mistake had nearly cost me my job and violated my privacy in ways I'm still dealing with. It's been a few months now, and I won't pretend it's been easy. Starting over at 26 wasn't part of my plan. But as I sit in my new apartment, enjoying the quiet and the knowledge that my belongings are exactly where I left them, I know I made the right choice. Last week, I ran into Jake's cousin at a coffee shop. She told me Laura had moved in with Jake temporarily while she figured out her next career move. Apparently, she's now considering becoming a life coach, specializing in authentic living and relationship advice. The irony would be funny if it weren't so sad. Sometimes I miss Jake, or rather, the person I thought he was. But then I remember how it felt to be constantly dismissed, to have my boundaries ignored and my concerns minimized. I realize now that the problem wasn't just Laura's behavior, but Jake's unwillingness to acknowledge it as problematic. A mutual friend told me Jake started dating someone new. Apparently, she gets along great with Laura, which Jake sees as a sign that she's the one. I hope, for her sake, that she has better boundaries than I did, or at least a better locked drawer for her personal belongings. As for me, I'm focusing on rebuilding my career and learning to trust my instincts. I've started seeing someone casually, a guy who not only respects my boundaries but actually gets excited when I enforce them. The first time I told him I needed a night to myself to work, he didn't try to convince me otherwise or show up unannounced. He just said, "That's cool, let me know when you're free." It was such a simple thing, but it nearly brought me to tears. I've learned that sometimes, the hardest boundaries to set are with the people we love, and that family first shouldn't mean family only. Real love, whether from family or partners, should lift you up, not tear you down. It should respect your boundaries, not trample them. And it should never, ever, make you choose between your self-respect and a relationship. Laura's actions might have been the catalyst, but ultimately, it was Jake's response that ended our relationship. Because when someone shows you who they are and who they'll always put first, believe them the first time. Or, in my case, the 100th time. Better late than never, right? I still have days where I question my decision, where I wonder if I could have tried harder or been more understanding. But then I remember the relief I felt when I finally stood up for myself, when I chose my own well-being over someone else's comfort. And I realize that sometimes, the happiest endings aren't about finding the right person, but about being brave enough to walk away from the wrong one. As I write this, sitting in my peaceful, Laura-free apartment, I can't help but smile at the thought of Jake and Laura, probably still enabling each other's worst instincts. I hope they're happy in their codependent bubble. As for me, I'm learning that sometimes the best family is the one you choose, the one that respects your boundaries and celebrates your success instead of sabotaging it. And if Laura ever decides to borrow someone else's confidential work documents for her social media content, well, that's not my problem anymore. Though I do hope her next victim has better cybersecurity practices than I did. Maybe I should send her new girlfriend a lockbox as a housewarming gift? Just kidding. Mostly. In the end, I realized that true love doesn't ask you to shrink yourself to make room for someone else's chaos. It doesn't demand that you sacrifice your boundaries on the altar of family loyalty. And it certainly doesn't laugh when someone violates your trust and jeopardizes your career. So here's to new beginnings, to locked laptop drawers, and to partners who understand that family first doesn't mean family only. And if anyone needs me, I'll be enjoying the peace and quiet of my Laura-free life, with all my clothes exactly where I left them.